It's like
Trumpets
a
would be great.
rocket
Oh,
ship.
now we're here. There we go.
Okay, we're here. No, I want a countdown in the future, though. I want,
You
if
would think
finish
that would just be common
listening.
courtessy for going on. Like,
Right, right.
give us
Like, put
some kind of
arrange your face. You have 30
yeah.
seconds. Yeah, but here we are. Um, Thank you for coming back and talking with me. I mean, last time I just sort of felt like we jumped in and I didn't know you at all, and then everything felt like magic to me. I felt like I was, like, sitting at the feet, I mean, no pressure, but, like, sitting at the feet of some guru.
Oh, no, I don't like where this is going already. I can promise you, if there's anyone who is full of flaws and fuck ups, it is me. So I don't want that guru position
Oh,
at all.
and I don't mean it in that way because, I wouldn't like a guru who wasn't flawed anyway. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I guess just it felt like sitting with somebody who was real and honest and, like, looking at things with sincerity and care, and that just felt like a really magical conversation to get to be part of, and so I'm excited to get to talk again. No pressure now that I've said that.
Yeah, I'll try to take it off now.
But yeah, and I just appreciate your openness so much, for just to orient anybody who's listening. I had responded to one of Dwayne's posts a while back, and we'd been in a little bit of a conversation about liminality, and so then I pitched, "Hey, how would you feel hopping on Substack Live and talking about liminality?" Which is a pretty open-ended thing, and
Mm.
I appreciate your willingness to play with that and just see what happens.
No, I just love the idea so much. Liminality is just such an important concept and idea that I think runs throughout all of my work, whether it's visual or written. There's something really insightful about the paradox and the tension of it, the tension more than anything else, of that suspended spaces. And I think there's just so much richness and so much meaning that's rife around that concept that I'm always looking for ways to explore it, whether visually or through prose or anything like that. There's something that really calls to me in that space. So I was excited to hear that this was a discussion that we could have.
Yeah. For me, I was thinking about this morning and realizing the first time I ever heard the word liminal was probably like 2020, 2021. And I remember Googling it
Mhm.
and being like, oh, everybody's using this word. What does it mean? And I didn't even know it. And I feel like since then I hear it everywhere, and I don't know if that's just like the, frequency illusion where once you've heard something once, suddenly you start noticing it, or if it's kind of on the uptick. I asked Google, and Google thinks it's on the uptick, but um, which made me think about, like, well, what is it about liminality that and about that word liminal that maybe speaks to this moment, or this stretch of moments we're in right now?
Yeah. I think, if I can be honest, I think it's because liminality is all we ever really have. Um, I think when we talk about being fully present, what we're really talking about is being in the tension between the already and the not yet. So that's all we ever get to experience. And even when you are fully present, the present is not a permanent place. It's not a static place. As soon as you recognize the present, it's no longer the present. You've moved on to a new present. It's this constantly shifting thing. So we're always on the threshold of the next moment. We're
Mm.
never really arriving. We're always living in the tension. We're everything that seems solid and fixed in the world is really um teeming with activity below the surface. Like there's no such thing as solid objects. Everything is an event. We ourselves are not fixed and stable fixtures. We ourselves are events that are constantly unfolding. So we ourselves can never be anything but liminal beings.
Yeah. I thought about that coming into this conversation that it's, on the one hand, oh, I'm so excited to talk about liminality, but on the other hand, there's a sort of absurdity to it because it's almost like acting like, oh, there are these spaces in our life that are liminal. Let's sit outside of those spaces and talk about them. When, as you say, we're liminal creatures. Like everything is inherently liminal. Everything's in flux. Everything's constantly changing. And so, you know, we wouldn't be able to talk about a non-liminal space with any veracity or accuracy because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think, it goes back to, even Heraclitus had that idea, no man steps in the same river twice because he's not the same man and it's not the same river. Our cells regenerate every 7 years. So we're in literally constant flux and regrowth and regeneration. We're constantly becoming something different. But I also think there's something to be said about the plurality of liminality. I
Mhm.
think because we are never just one thing. I think that's one of the things that a lot of us struggle with when we try to come to terms with our identities, or when we try to come to terms with who or what we are as people, who or what we want out of life, or where we're going. Is that we're constantly trying to understand ourselves because we don't know. We're a mystery even unto ourselves, but we feel like we should have ourselves figured out at all times. We feel like we should be these stable, consistent, coherent creatures, and that's just an impossibility. We're constantly in a state of becoming, but that's also not to say that there aren't um liminalities stacked on top of each other at
Mhm.
all times. We are at various thresholds. We're never even at one threshold. And I think that's one of the things that makes the topic interesting, but also complicated because we do tend to think of liminal spaces as singular events between a linear direction of time. We think that have arrived here, but now we're transitioning to here, and so liminality just exists in that in between space. But
Yeah.
we're always in that in between space. Like I can think about where my life is right now and recognize, four, five, six different liminal spaces that are colliding in at once. Last month my youngest child, my daughter, just turned 18 and graduated high school. Later this
Congratulations.
year, thank you. I was gonna
And condolences both. It's probably a little bit of
yeah,
both.
it was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot. And then, later this year, in December, my son will turn 21.
Mhm.
He's in college. He's about a year away from finishing his bachelor's and going away to grad school. So I have this liminal space of I'm right at the threshold of parenthood becoming a very different thing, and being a father becoming a very different thing. And so there's a liminal space within my relationship to my children and where they are at in life. But then what that also opens up for me is like, because now my role as a father is shifting towards more of a support role.
Yeah.
um, then it opens up the question, well, what does my life look like now? What comes next for me?
Mhm.
I've spent the past 20 years raising children and making every decision I've made about bettering them or supporting them or being there for them, providing for them. And now there's this gap within my world and within my existence that I don't know what to do with yet. So that's something that's weighing on me that I'm thinking about. And then you think about just even smaller interactions with people. Like, one of the things you mentioned earlier was like you praised me for some of my honesty and openness, but there's been some events recently personally where I have to admit I've hurt some people that I shouldn't have
Mhm.
by not being as honest as I should have been, by being dishonest, by purposefully being deceitful. And that's something that I have to kind of take in and recognize that who I thought I was as a person is now shifting because I have to recognize this damage that I've done to another person and go, okay, what does that mean for me now? And what do I do to move forward through that and learn from that and become better because of that? So this liminality of recognizing the tension between who I thought I was and what my actions were, and then what I do in the face of now seeing that. And you figure, and then creatively speaking, that's always a liminal space. You're always looking for wonder and curiosity and discovery, and so there's all these things that stack up. So we're constantly navigating liminal spaces, and I'm not sure where that's going or where I'm even going with that thought. It's just the recognition that there's no escaping the tension, and it's just trying to recognize all those different spaces and the way they kind of bleed into one another, and how they all tell different stories, and we're constantly trying to figure out what they mean and what to do with it.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you say the piece about experiencing yourself as not honest in a particular situation and having to reckon with that, it's making me think that, we're sort of handed this story, I think, in our culture or in certain aspects of Western culture that you have a static identity and there will be little shifts, but basically you are an honest person or you are this and that, you know, I am not a person who would ever do XYZ. I am this, I'm that. And really, to think of yourselves as sort of formed and static with just like peripheral changes. And I think there's like a lot of scope for self-compassion from thinking of yourself as liminal and accepting that that is the
Ooh.
nature of our being, that, you know, we are probably all people who could do just about anything under the right set of circumstances.
Right.
And
Um,
just accepting that liminality and then trying to make the best of it and create the most beautiful journey out of that that we can, which includes owning the mistakes and owning the moments when we let ourselves or other people down. Yeah, I'd never thought of a tie between liminality and self-compassion before, but the people I know who struggle most with self-compassion tend to be people who say, "I am X, I am Y. I can't do that because I am X, I am Y." They have a very static notion of self.
mhm. I think so. I think that's always problematic when we think of the self as something fixed, something. It's always porous and malleable. I mean, what I love most about like the Buddhist tradition is like they throw the idea of the self right out the window
Yeah.
from the get go. It's like they recognize that the self is a fiction. It's a story. It's a story we tell ourselves about ourselves so we know how to navigate the world. It's the roadmap we give ourselves. Now, you could look at that in one way and say, like, okay, so that means my entire concept of self is utter bullshit, and maybe there is some truth to that. But I like to think of it as more of like kind of this blank slate or clay that's moldable and porous. I think the beautiful thing about realizing that your identity, your sense of self is a story, is that stories can be rewritten. Stories can be retold and reimagined in ways that we didn't know were possible. We get to be the author of those stories. We get to make those choices of who we have been, who we are, but who we want to be next. And we get to decide on those stories. And when we decide on those stories, we still have the open handedness to be able to still move along with the story as it unfolds. I think the beautiful thing about stories is just because they may not be capital T true doesn't mean they don't reveal profound truths about who and what we are, who or what we could be, or just the truth of the human condition. And I think that the trick with that story mentality is the ability to hold it open-handed. I think when we cling too firmly to our stories is when we hurt ourselves, when we start to hurt other people. And I think you said something really poignant. It's recognizing that any person at any time under the right circumstances can be an absolutely horrible person.
Yeah.
And then recognizing that you have that potentiality, but the reverse is also true. Like you can do something terrible, but you don't have to be defined by that terrible thing either. The check and balance is recognizing that in that moment of realizing you've done something terrible is another liminal space because you're now at the threshold of another doorway where you can choose. I can acknowledge what I've done, I can own it, and I can take responsibility, and I can move forward with that knowledge and make active choices and changes to be more in alignment with the story I'd like to tell about myself, or I can do nothing. And I think a lot of times, actually, this will be a sneak preview. I was making a video for my paid subscribers today and talking about some of this point, and I was mentioning that, a lot of times we mistake self-awareness or recognition or noticing as the change, and
Mhm.
really it isn't. It's sometimes easy to get caught up in self-analysis. I know I'm really good at analyzing myself and sort of recognizing things within myself, and it's easy to believe that just the awareness, that going like, okay, I am guilty of this and I'm guilty of this, and here's my faults, here's my flaws, here's my foibles, here's the mistakes I tend to make. It's easy to see that and think, okay, that's making me better. I mean, it does, but it's realizing that that awareness moment is a pivot moment. The awareness is itself a liminal space because you're aware of something within yourself and then you have to act on it. And so I think when you recognize that becoming aware of something about yourself, it puts you at the threshold of another door. And you're
Mhm.
asked to go, what am I going to do with this awareness? And if you're the type of person like sometimes I can be, when you get caught up in patting yourself on the back for being self aware, you don't actually do anything to change the patterns of behavior. So in some regards, that makes you even more culpable than you were before, because now you can't even plead ignorance. Now you know what your faults are, and you've actively chosen not to do anything about it. So the real cusp is being at that threshold and seeing awareness and recognition as catalysts for change, as catalysts for becoming. It's the starting point. It's like even when you look at something like a 12-step program, what does it start with? Recognizing you have a problem. That's step one, not step 12. That's not the finish line. That's the threshold that you have to step over to continue walking into another liminal space.
One thing that feels true to me about that, just coming from my own life, is that yes, self awareness is the first step. But I think I can get hard on myself with, well, the second I have awareness, now I have to take the next step. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I mean, there are
Mm,
situations, for example, I was in a very difficult and unhealthy marriage for a lot of years. And
same.
when I finally, I'm sure somebody out there can relate to that. Um, when I could feel myself coming toward a place of being ready to leave. And I could feel it as an awareness like, this is not the place for me. I don't belong here. This is not healthy. This is not good. I need to leave. But I also, alongside that awareness, felt this trust that this would continue to grow and it would carry me. I didn't need to take that seed of a feeling and like do some big panicked sprint out. I could let it build and let it direct me. And I feel like doing it that way and staying aware, so not turning the feeling it off, but staying aware helped me to grow in the ways that I needed to grow to take the next step. And
Mm,
I would argue that if somebody has real self awareness and they stay in that self awareness, it will take them to the change.
mm,
Now, if they have the aha moment and they go, oh, good job, aha, and then they never think about it again, that's a problem, right? But I
right.
think if you stay in the awareness, it will not let you not change,
Hmm.
right? So maybe the change takes a week, maybe it takes a minute, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes a decade. But if you're really staying in that awareness and committing to that awareness, my sense is it will carry you toward actual change, because if it doesn't, it will become such anguish that you have to shut the awareness down. So either you're going to shut the awareness back down or you're going to change. Maybe. I mean,
No,
that's how
I
it feels
think
in my life.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's several really really great points that you're making there. I think one of the things that I think we have to point out if we're talking about liminality and liminal spaces, like part of the power of them is being able to find a way to sit within them, not to rush through them. Because that's the thing. When we talk about liminal spaces, we talk about them as between spaces, corridors, hallways, breezeways, passageways, these unfixed marks or unnameable terrains between point A and point B. And so when we think about it that way, we often think about it linearly, which gives us the idea that we're supposed to try to get through that space as quickly as possible, because it suggests that there is a destination we're trying to get to. So the problem there, I think, is like that destination mentality, where there is an A to B, where the liminal space is just the space we're passing to get here. And I think the thing is, we never get there. We're just in the liminal space. And so it becomes uh, a, the power of it becomes our ability to sit comfortably within the tension of the uncertainty of the not yet, with the knowledge of the already, that's guiding us through that continual liminal space. I can't remember which book it is, but there was one of Matt Haig's nonfiction books, and I'm gonna butcher it, but he makes this analogy that like our hand is always on the doorknob, our hand is always on the handle, and when we open the door, all that's waiting for us is another door and another handle. And so it's like it's doors and handles all the way down.
Yeah.
So it's always about having to realize that when we leave one place of tension, we're just entering into another place of tension. So if we don't learn to be comfortable in that tension, this is not gonna be an enjoyable trip for all of us.
Yeah. So
Um,
I really love the word threshold, but I was thinking sort of coming into this conversation about how it does give you the sense of, oh, just that little wooden strip at the entrance to the door, you just step over it and you've moved from space to space. Good
mhm,
job. And so often thresholds are really protracted. and you have to sit still in them, and or you have the threshold itself brings all kinds of challenges that are preparing you for the space beyond, which is of course also another threshold. And so then I was thinking about like the image of like traveling across an ocean or something. And, an ocean is just a threshold between continents, but it's big and it's long and it's salty and it has storms that can toss you backwards. And sometimes you might have to sit there and wait for the wind to kick up again. And
Yeah, and
thresholds.
what I love about even that ocean metaphor is just even scientifically speaking, that is one of the spaces on this planet that we know the least about. It's the
Yeah.
least explored. So I love that so much because it really does hammer on that idea of the unknowing and uncertainty and the mystery of being in a liminal space. That's where hope lives. Rebecca Solnit has this great book called Hope in the Darkness, and her main thesis throughout that book is like the only thing that makes hope possible is uncertainty. Hope can't exist in any place where certainty does exist. So it's the unknowing, it's the mystery that even makes something like belief and hope and longing and yearning important and meaningful. Because if we know where we're going, if we know what we're doing, then there's just no need for growth or development, and nothing interesting happens. It's just stagnation.
Yeah. Yeah. Sitting with that ocean metaphor too, like, and I hadn't thought about this until you said that, but taking it to that next place, thinking about how we know so little about the ocean, I feel like thresholds and therefore all of life have that feeling to it that there's what we experience on the surface and we can skid across the surface, but there's like so much depth that can be explored too. Or sometimes there's depth that you can't actually explore, but it's still shaping your experience, right? It's there whether you explore it
Sure.
or not. And that to me, I mean, it's actually funny to think how thresholds, liminality, I think of it, it's sort of on a plane, on a flat plane, but it's like it's above and below too. It's
Yes.
coming from everywhere.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly right. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, that you can experience multiple liminalities at once. But I think it also goes back to um, understanding ourselves, and it returns back to identity because we can connect it back to the thoughts you have where you encounter an event in your life where you make a choice, or you act in a certain way that surprises even you, for better or worse. Like we were talking about in a negative, because that's what's has most recently occurred for me, to where you know you think you have the story of who you think you are, and based on how you show up in the world and how you'd like to show up in the world, how you have maybe patterned yourself to show up in the world, and yet you're put in a position for whatever reason, and you make a choice that is completely incongruous with the
Yeah.
story you've told it yourself, that is completely in alignment with your moral compass or your values or whatever. And then you have to sit there and take that in, going, what drove that? Because now I'm discovering the depth of my own mystery, the depth of my own porousness and fluidity, that I'm now in conflict with myself. And then I have to sit within the tension of, this is who I thought I was, but this is what I've just done. And how do these two things live together? What is the both and of this? And what do I do with it? And being willing to face that and sit in and I think that's where you're absolutely right. You can't rush through that reconciliation. You really have to sit. In order to grow from it, you really have to sit within the tension of those 2 points, of the who I thought I was, and then who I might have just revealed to myself to be, and try to understand, you know, what's at heart of that. What's the depth of that? What's the unexplored portion? What's below the surface of these things that needs to be brought to the light of day, that can understand how these two things can be joined, and what does forward look like from that point.
Yeah. The last Substack live I did was with Sam Morelli, who's a poet here on Substack. He's wonderful, but he talked about it in terms of sitting in the rubble and sifting the rubble.
Mm,
When
yeah.
some pillar of your life falls, some piece of your identity suddenly fractures. Don't rush so fast to the next thing. Take a
Yeah.
minute. And that's hard because we do have a culture of like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and move on and fix it fast and build the
Yes.
next thing.
Completely.
And also probably you don't wanna just sit in the rubble forever, like, there's a sweet spot
Right.
that varies
Well, you could even say
situation
that
to
there's a certain level of liminality to that too, because there's a
Mhm,
delicate balance between rushing to get yourself back up and then wallowing as well. I
right.
mean, like that's neither one are doing you any favors. I think it's in a book called Eternal Echoes by John O'Donohue. And
Holding a John O'Donohue book in my hands.
perfect. That's why we get along so well. I love John O'Donoghue so much. Um, he is one of the people that or one of the writers or makers that I refer to as soul doctors, people
Mhm,
whose work provides a salve to soothe the burn of daily living. So it's for me, it's like John O'Donoghue and Anne Lamott, and oh, the list
mhm,
could go on and on. But John O'Donoghue talks to be like um, when you've had that moment, that crisis point where everything you thought you were is shattered, he warns you not to be in a rush to gather the pieces of your
mhm,
broken self, to gather the pieces of your fractured heart. Um, don't be in too because sometimes that causes even more damage. Grief doesn't move linearly. Grief itself is another kind of liminal space because it's not a linear place. It moves in waves. John O'Donoghue talks about that too, where he talks about grief has a sure rhythm, but
mhm,
it's there's something oceanic about that
mhm,
rhythm. He likens it to the tides, where sometimes you feel like you're making progress and then you're pulled back out again, and then
mhm,
you have to fight and swim against the tide of your own life at these points.
mhm.
And I actually just wrote about. I love that you went with fragments and rubble and brought that up. The newsletter I just put out today was kind of about that same notion that there's these points we need where either we fall apart or we need to, where we
Mhm.
actually need to deconstruct ourselves. We need to be broken down to our most essential parts. We need to let it all fall apart. And then the work at that point is not rebuilding. The work at that point is sifting through what remains, sifting through the residue and the remnants and the fragments. I think that's why I connect so much to the medium of collage, because it is a medium of fragments. It is a medium of things taken out of their original context, things ripped apart, cut away from the place that they were made to be. And so now they're nameless. Now they're less than what they once were. They're not whole. And yet that becomes the things that make a whole new story possible. That
Mhm.
becomes the thing that makes a whole new way of inventing or living, or what makes the art the art. It's these fragments of discarded things that have been ignored and overlooked that somehow are given new meaning by their placement with each other, by their rearrangement of the fragments. So it's not about repair so much as reclamation.
Yeah. I as you're saying that, I mean, my brain went to story even before you said the word, and I was thinking just, like, that we are all collages and we're continually recollaging ourselves. And, in that moment when you recognize that a story isn't serving you, right? That even if it
Yes.
lines up with the facts, there are other stories that line up with the facts that align with your values better or
Hmm.
align with where you're trying to go. Those moments where you can't just like ex- excise some part of yourself, right? But those parts of self can be given like new ways of playing. I don't know if you're familiar with internal family systems at all, IFS.
Not
I'm going
much.
to have a master's in counseling psych, but I don't actually work as a therapist. So I only have very passing familiarity, but there's this idea that we're made of so many different parts of self. We've all got so many different voices. Some are older, some are younger, some are more helpful, some are on the surface less helpful, but they're never bad. They're all trying to protect us in different ways. And so if you find a part of you, and this could be like a story that's bl- blocking you in some way, there's value in stopping to notice, okay, how is this story originally trying to help me? Or how was this part
Mm.
originally trying to help me? And then going, okay, here's why this isn't necessary. What new job might be more fun for this part? Or what new story might we make of these same pieces? And um I find that to be a lot of fun to notice like that there are parts of myself that are scared of something and avoidant of something and it's not serving me anymore. But when I can recognize, oh, they're just trying to help and like thank them for that and then say, is there something else that you'd like to do that might be less stressful for you too? Usually they come up with something.
Mm,
um, and so there's
wow.
this sort of like recollaging of self of like,
Yeah.
oh, like you're still here, but like how might you enjoy being rearranged now? Because I don't want
Right.
you to leave, but
Yeah. Yeah.
how can we rearrange you?
Wow. No,
Fire kiss for the win, Jill says.
yeah. Oh, hi, Jill. Oh, I love that she's here.
Me too.
There is so much I want to pick up on in everything you just said. It's exciting. Number one, I couldn't agree more that we are collages as beings. We are collaged beings. We are an amalgamation of things. And once again, in the Buddhist tradition, they have this idea of skandhas, and so they say that a person, a self, is made up of five skandhas. And I can't remember the names of each five anymore. But the word skandha, if I remember correctly, is a Sanskrit word that means heaps. So we're not only just a heap of things, we are heaps, plural, of things. And the interesting thing is about that is, a heap doesn't have its own identity. It's not that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's only the sum of its parts. So you can take one thing out of the heap and the heap's still a heap. You take another thing out of the heap, it's still a heap, but eventually once you move all the things, it's not a heap. The heap completely disappears. And that's kind of porous, ephemeral part of being a self. And so we can always kind of rearrange that. One of the things I always say that happens for me in kind of that meditative space of putting a collage together is like, what it feels like for me when a certain fragment or certain piece falls into the right place, it feels like a certain piece of me falls into the right place. And so I'm discovering myself as I'm putting these fragments together, these broken things that don't fit anywhere, that have been taken from where they were originally supposed to be, and now are kind of lost and orphaned and now get to belong somewhere else. And that's part of the work. Um, I was also thinking about, um, you know, the excitingness of the porousness and malleability of the stories that we get to. I love that you said if the story stops serving you, because that's such an important point, and I think that's what we were trying to get at is that the stories are meant to serve a function. Our stories are practical and they're pragmatic. They are supposed to be roadmaps that help us function, roadmaps that help us give us some kind of understanding of how to move through the world. But at some point, sometimes the stories do stop serving us. And that's when we come to these crisis points to where we figure, well, what do we do now? We keep trying to force this story to work when actually it's an invitation to enter into a space of having maybe temporarily no story, or the space of rewriting the story or finding a story that will better serve us. Ken Wilber has a book called, I think it's called A Theory of Everything. And what he says in there is that a good theory of everything is just a theory that helps you get to a better theory of everything. So there's a pragmatism to that. Or if you wanted to make it, because I have to make it Buddhist again. The Buddhist, I've said this in other places, the Buddha likened his teaching to a raft that gets you to the other shore. And what he said about that was like, well, when you get to the other shore, you don't need the raft anymore.
Yeah.
Let it go. Why are you still carrying around the raft? And I think that's what so many of us are guilty of, especially me. Is that you construct this raft for a very specific purpose. You're here. You want to get there. So you build all the systems and methods and all the things that you need to get from this place to that place. And then you're still dragging the raft around and wondering why you're exhausted, wondering why you're tired, wondering why everything hurts and nothing feels right. So you're dragging around something that doesn't serve you anymore. You don't need it. Let it go. What do you need now? What is your new story? Every liminal space is the invitation to rearrange the fragments into a new composition, to figure out who you are now. Every new liminal space is an opportunity to let one raft go and maybe find another, to construct another. And I think where we often go wrong there too is we think in that new construction, in that new story, well, now this is the truth of who I am. Now this is my truth. And we don't recognize that even that next story is still a liminal story, because that's still just another raft that we use to get to another shore. That's still just another theory of everything that we use to get to our next theory of everything. It's just the story that helps us get to the next story that will serve us to help us get to the next story, to the next story. It's doors and handles all the way down.
I think It's interesting to think about how, like, we think of answers as like, "Oh, get to an answer," and then relief, "Finally, answer, now I'm safe," and the reality is that our answers probably burden us more than our questions, the answers that we cling on to, and we keep dragging that raft that got us across the river
Yes.
with us up the mountain when we could have put it down and put our energy into the next question?
Absolutely. There's a great book by an author named David Dark called The Sacredness of Questioning Everything.
Mhm.
And that was
Love
one of the most paradigmatic, yeah, it was one of those paradigmatic shifting books for me because in that it is the recognition that answers have a certain concretization built into them. There's a certain kind of certainty built into an answer. And because of that, there's a rigidity to them that doesn't serve us because it's not porous, it's not bendable, it's not flexible. You get a hard enough gust of wind or it gets hard enough by something, it can't handle that. It shatters, it breaks. There's no malleability to that. So what saves us, what redeems us is not finding our way to better answers, but finding our way to better
true.
questions. Don't
I
ask why our answers aren't good enough. Why ask why our questions aren't good enough?
I had a moment, a few months back with a family member who I love dearly. Hi, mom, if you're watching. Um, and she's very religious and views the world very differently than I do. I mean, not in all ways. In many ways, we view the world the same. But I was going through, I mean, I've been going through a pretty intense period of liminality with my health this year. I hope it's liminal. I hope it's not forever. I hope this is moving to
I'm
something.
rooting for you as much as I can. I promise.
um, but I said something to her about how I felt like so many things that I had just accepted. Suddenly, I had all these questions about, and like all the things I thought I knew, I suddenly felt like I unknew. Even though I've been through health challenges before, this one sort of challenged me in new ways. And she said, "Well, but that could all just be to take you to better answers." And I remember feeling like, ugh, I don't want better answers. I want better questions.
Yes.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah. And, not to like rag on that worldview. I think the reality is if you arrive at better answers, hopefully they do also eventually nudge you into better questions, but
Right.
only if you hold them a certain way, right? Like,
Yes, I think you have to there's that open-handedness again, like,
yes.
because answers usually, come with a certain kind of white-knuckled fist kind of clenching to it, because
Yeah.
there's so much certainty built into them. We build our identities around our answers. We build our worldviews around these answers, and we think that there are questions that we ask ourselves or that get asked to us that we answer that we think we only have to answer once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the question of who am I?
Yeah.
Or what am I here for? Or what do I believe? Or what is my stance on this? Or what do I think about this? I think you see that playing out in real time throughout the political landscape
Mhm.
at this juncture. And I think so many of look, I'm not qualified to make any of these statements. I'll say that right now. But I think one of the biggest problems we have across party lines and across everything else is like everyone is so married to a position. Everyone is so committed to the idea that to the identity that comes with holding a specific position that no one can listen to anything else that though it's just clinching, it's just fists and grasping. There's no open-handedness, there's no porousness that go, maybe I might be wrong, maybe I might be wrong. I think that's one of the most underused phrases and probably one of the most necessary is like I could be wrong, and
Yeah.
that openness to that. I think that that's necessary. Being we're so averse to being wrong, and we're so averse to admitting that we might be wrong. But if you don't do that, that's the only way growth occurs. That's the only way new knowledge occurs. I mean, in the scientific world part of what makes a good theory is your ability to prove it wrong, the ability to find where it could fall apart. I mean, that's part of the whole thing. When you're collecting data, an experiment is never a failure because it's all about collecting data. You're just collecting that data. You're running tests and you're collecting the numbers, and then you're making decisions that happen from there. There's a certain kind of iterative quality to it that I think we miss in so many other parts of our life where we don't have that idea of adapting and changing and making minute changes and then seeing what happens and then going forward and then admitting that our hypothesis was wrong and we have to reformulate it.
I'm reading State of Wonder right now by Ann Patchett. It's so good. So
Oh
I
yeah,
had to put it down to get on this call, so I hope you feel special. It was
I
hard to
do
put
now. Absolutely.
down. But it's, it's in large part about scientists, medical scientists, and there's a point where one of them is speaking scientifically, but what she says is that, you have to be careful when you're out doing your research that you're not so focused on the thing you're looking for that you don't see what actually emerges. And I think that's true all the time, every day, always.
Absolutely. I think that's I was doing a podcast interview yesterday, and one of the things that got brought up, and I was talking about kind of a similar concept that I see in my work. I was asked, if I come to my desk to start a new collage, if I come with an idea, if I come with a concept, do I start with an idea? And that's something I'm adamantly opposed to. That's not to say I have a problem with any other maker that works that way. By all means, do your
Right,
work
yeah.
however you need to do it.
Mhm.
But for me, that just doesn't work, because what I'm most excited by and what I'm most interested in is discovery. So I don't ever come to my desk with any idea whatsoever. Every new piece is an exercise in experimentation and exploration, and it's just going, here are the fragments that I have in front of me, what can they become? And so it's actively moving piece by piece, going, how does it feel when this piece sits up against this piece? How do I feel when this sits here versus here? What's coming up for me as this moves and shifts? Because it's palpable and it's tangible. That's what I love so much about making collages. It is literally the it is an inner feeling that is made tangible. It's
Mm.
an interiority given a texture. And there's just no other way to get at that for me.
What an incredible practice just for growing the depth of your conversation with your own body and soul, like even beyond collage, right? Because it's very hard in some stressful life moment to tap into what do I actually feel here? And not just feel at the like sort of surface, what do I want? What do I want? Gimme, gimme, gimme level, but like the deeper, like what's really feeling true.
Mm.
Like it can be hard to do that in actual life, but it strikes me that like that sort of like the quieter space that you have for yourself when you're collaging, and that sort of sacred space is a great place to be practicing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what it has come to be. My making a collage for me is definitely, or I should say, my creative practice is one and the same thing as my spiritual practice. My
Yeah.
my collage making is my meditation, and it's for those exact reasons, because it is beyond um it's beyond the thinking part of myself. What I love about collage so much versus writing is I have to sit in two completely different spaces. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, writing for me is very difficult. It's very tumultuous, because I have to sit in the noisiest part of myself and
Mm,
try my best to be still enough and quiet enough in a place that's very uncomfortable, that's very clamorous, because that's just what my head is like. Um, and I have to try to grab things from that noise and from that clamor and try to pull it into some kind of quiet center and hold it long enough and close enough to where then I can try to put it into words and try to describe it. But when I get to collage, I just kinda get to switch off in the best way possible. There's no thinking, it's all gut, it's all emotion, it's all feeling, and there's no way to put any of it into words. There's no way in it. It's utterly visceral. It's just it's beyond explanation. Like, if someone asked me why I put this piece there versus here, I couldn't tell you.
mm,
Other than it felt right there. Some part of me clicked when it sat in this place that it didn't click for me here, because it is just literally that pure of a feeling. It has nothing to do with uh, color values or color theory. It has nothing to do with like the rule of thirds or any kind of compositional structures, because quite frankly I don't understand any of that. I have no background in any of that. So it's complete emotionality for me, and it's all about literally having to observe what is happening on a substrate on my desk while also observing what's happening inside me simultaneously. But no part of it ever feels like being stretched into two places. It actually feels like those two things become synchronous. Those two things start dancing together and ebbing and flowing together and calling and responding together. Like calls to like, and then, like, there's this give and take. There's a reciprocity that's happening naturally that I get to sit back and witness and
Mhm.
see what that is. And then at the end of it, then I can sit back and try to understand what it means. And so much of that is collaborative too. It's not just me determining what it means. It's once it gets shared with the world. I've talked about this with Jill a lot, that once you so in that regard, even the work is kind of liminal, even once it's finished,
Mhm.
because the meaning of it still isn't defined, at least for me. I don't know what this piece means. I know what I felt while I was making it. I know what I feel when I look at it. But there's these beautiful moments in these in between places, in between me and the audience, in between me and the world, in between the work and another person, that they look at it, they bring their own story to it, they bring their own experiences to it, and they start pulling things out of the work that I didn't know were there, that I didn't even tend to put there. And then they start teaching me about what my work means. And I start discovering not only more about the work, but I start discovering more about myself as the
Mhm.
vehicle between them and the work. The work itself becomes this kind of another kind of communicative liminal space between me and another person, where we're both discovering what the work means together. But because we're both collaborating on what this piece means, I'm discovering who they are and they're discovering who I am. And I'm getting to experience what I am through their eyes. And they're getting to experience who they are through my eyes. Who is it? Sartre talks about that in some of his work, that so much of our existence we garner from the gaze of the other, seeing
Mhm.
ourselves in the eyes of the other,
Mhm.
that confers something about the meaning of who we are. And I think that happens in that space.
I love that idea that, okay, so the creation itself, the collaging is exploratory and it's about sort of dropping into that quieter space and feeling that pull here and that pull there, and you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't go in with a set outcome in mind or anything like that. But then hearing that second piece where you've shared it and now it's in the world, that's exploratory too. And I think for
Hmm.
so many people, once we get to that part, it's like, and now I'm looking for a badge of approval and a pat on my back, or or whatever it might be. But it sounds like you bring deep curiosity to that second space.
I really
And
try
so it
to.
becomes creative in a sense too, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. I think the beautiful thing about collage is that for me, I think every part of it is a collaboration. Because
Mhm,
if you think about it, collage, nothing is beginning ex nihilo in collage. You are beginning with pre-existent material. You're cutting things out of books and magazines that were structured to be handled in a certain way, to be viewed in a
mhm,
particular way, and now you're subverting it. Now you're taking it out of context. And so you're taking the work that someone else made and then you're responding to it in a different way. You're creating a new story from a story that you were handed. And what better analog for just being a person in the world? We are born into a particular time, a particular place, to particular parents, to a particular economic situation, in a particular culture, in a particular country. We are given all these things that we get no say over. Heidegger would refer to it as your thrownness. You are thrown into the world with all these preconditions that you have no control over, that you can't change. Um, and yet you have to make something meaningful from that. You have to give that a story. I think that's what you see happen in collage. Someone gives you a story and then you are tasked with creating a new story from it. So there's already a collaboration happening. If you cut out a page from a magazine, graphic designers were all over that. Photographers were involved in that. And each one of them were making very decisive creative choices about how that page looked, about how the color grading was done, about how the lighting was done. There's all these things that were done before you ever got to that page. But then you're taking it and figuring out, what do I do with this? What
mhm,
do I make out of this? And so that's already a collaboration. And then exactly, you share it back into the world and the collaboration still doesn't stop, because now, you know, um, the audience gets this chance to say what the work means. And I think that's why, for me, I when not only do I not come to my desk with an idea for what I want the piece to look like, I don't ever come to it with an idea for what I want it to mean either, because that's not interesting to me. I want meaning to occur from the process of putting it together. I want to feel what the story is as the story's unfolding. But then also, I want to leave space for the audience to come to it with whatever stories they need to. I was talking about this with another artist friend of mine earlier this week, that I think as makers, I think what we're really making, no matter what medium we're in, are spaces. We're making space and inviting someone else to bring whatever they're holding or harboring and carrying, and maybe giving them this temporary place where they can put it down for a little bit and maybe look at it more gently, or more look at it more closely, and make it and look at it more intently or differently. I think at heart, all art is about seeing, and about seeing clearly, but more importantly, about seeing differently.
Mm. Yeah. I love that notion that, like, every work of art, whether it's a collage or a poem, it's like you've created a room for somebody to step into,
Yeah.
and that you're sitting there in that room too. So, like, they're in conversation with you, they're in conversation with your work, but they're bringing the whole conversation of their lives with them, and that every work of art is a meeting place in a sense.
I think that I had another conversation not long ago, and I think I may have even mentioned this the last time we talked, but it's just it is for me, I think the core of what I hope to do as a maker in the world is create temples in places of desolation, or create sanctuaries, create refuges. Oh, we did talk about this because it's a blanket fort. There we go. Yeah. Oh, so not to be redundant, but yeah, I think that's exactly what we're doing. I think maybe in a lot of ways, every piece of art, if it's done well, is its own liminal space, because it's this temporary place you can step into to feel different than you did before, to look at things different than you did before, to experience things differently than you did before, with the goal being that you don't leave the same when you exit the piece. And the goal isn't to live in that piece forever. It is a temporary place, it is a temporary shelter, a tabernacle in the wilderness,
Mhm.
um, where the mystery is invited to dwell amongst us. And then we have to take whatever happens in that space with us. I mean, that's one of the things that gets talked about in Buddhism and meditation, where it's like you can have these insights and this awareness that occurs on the cushion, but what matters most is what you leave when you get off the cushion, when you go back into the world. It's easy to be calm and centered in the 30 minutes that you're cross-legged and your eyes are closed and your hands are folded, but who are you like when you leave the cushion? Who are you like when you go back into the world? And that's something that's always important to me as a person. Um, in the art community, in the creative community, we've gotten so used to having to play the game of separating the art from the artist, because sometimes really shitty people make really beautiful things. And that happens. We're all flawed and we are all fucked up. So there is have to be that understanding. But I think for me, it's always about trying to find a way to bridge the gap between the two things, to make sure that to try my best to be the same person on every space that I show up in. And sameness, kind of holding sameness loose-handedly, in that not a static, concretized being, but an honest being, and more honest than maybe I have been recently. But being that kind of place where it's like I can show up with the same level of authenticity and the same level of sincerity and the same level of truthfulness in all those spaces. So it's about entering, and I think that's what every liminal space is kind of supposed to be. We're supposed to garner something from it, be fortified with something from it that gives us the wherewithal or the sustenance or whatever, courage, boldness, bravery, whatever it might be, to enter into the next liminal space and sit in that tension for a little while and cling on to what we had when we left the other space, until we understand what we need to put down in this space and what we need to pick up in this space. Because I think that's part of the process too, that we're always carrying something. We're never completely unburdened, but there is a time and a place to put certain things down, to let certain things go, and to take something else up and bring that into the next room.
Yeah. The word tension fits that image of liminal spaces so much. I think another one that comes up for me is aliveness, that it just
Mm,
anytime we're really awake to the flux and to the transition and to the putting down and the picking up and the loss and the grief and the moving forward and the what's being born and the what's dying and all that, I think those are the most alive moments when we are accessing all of that. But of course, there's tension because in any moment where we're really alive, we're going to be alive to our mortality. We're going to be
mhm,
alive to the fact that we're, exhaling off bits of ourself with every breath, right? And picking up something new on the inhale. Um, and that aliveness to me is also the place that I try to write from. You talk about collage and not going in with an agenda. And I will sometimes go, oh, I want to write a poem about this. Like I feel this. This is a poem. It wants to be written. But it's important to me to not know what that's gonna look like,
mm,
to have surprise in it. I don't think I've ever written a poem that I really felt good about that didn't surprise me in some way. If
yeah,
I felt like I had it outlined in my head before I even began, then what was the point, right? Then I was just
yeah.
writing down an answer I already thought I knew and was carrying around. It's that element of surprise.
I
Um
I think that's exactly it for me. I love being surprised, without just repeating that word over and over, but yeah, it's all about surprise. But at the heart of that surprise, I think what it is, it's joy and it's wonder, or wonder more than anything else, and wonder on a multiplicity of levels. Wonder as in wondering, which is its own kind of questioning, but wonder also in just awe. Earlier you talked about, I can't remember the context, but you brought up being thankful and saying thank you. And there's this great passage from Meister Eckhart, something to the effect of that. If the only prayer you ever said was thank you, that's the only one you'd ever need.
Yeah.
Or that's the only one that suffices. There's something about um, liminal spaces also being a place of immense gratitude, or an opportunity to be gratitude, being grateful within the tension. Thank goodness to whatever's there that helped me get this far into this room.
Mhm.
Thank you to everyone who is sitting in this space of this room with me. Thank you for supporting me into helping me get to the next room. Thank you for still being here, even though I discovered I wasn't who I thought I was before I entered this room. And thank you for still walking out of this room with me. There's just so many opportunities to be grateful. And I think that is an important part. We talk about liminality and thresholds, and we use words like tension. And I think that is accurate because there is a real uncomfortableness. There is a tension. But I think we forget about the the possibilities of joy and the possibilities of wonder in liminality, the possibility of thankfulness in these places where we're so uncertain, but we still get to be grateful that we're there.
Yeah. One thing I'm currently reading, I suddenly can't remember. It's like that far away. Like trying to look at the title by Francis Weller. It's wonderful. In the Absence of the Ordinary. That's the name of it. I was
Oh,
like, what is
that's
this
such
book?
a good
I'm still
title.
reading it. Yeah, it's a great title. But he talks a lot about grief and he talks about liminality. And one of the things he brings up is ritual and how,
Mm.
in every other culture and in every other time in history, there have been so many rituals to help people through their liminal spaces. And now, in Western culture, um, there's really an absence of ritual, particularly if you're not a religious person. Like, we've lost coming of age rituals, and we've lost even a lot of our rituals around death have really been shrunk down to maximize efficiency, right? Like all rituals, we've made everything very efficient to our own detriment. And, as you're talking about collage, and as I was thinking about poetry, I was thinking about how art, um or making anything can really come in to sort of, I think, meet some of that need for ritual. And particularly if you find ways to either share it or to do it in community, I think that can be a space that fills in for some of that ritual because liminal spaces are uncomfortable, sometimes excruciatingly so. And change and loss is the nature of things, and it's really hard. And like we all need support for that, whether it's in the form of a religious community or ritual or an artistic community, an artistic ritual or whatever else it might be.
I agree completely. Anthropologically speaking, our entire understanding of liminality is directly tied to a certain degree of religiosity. Everything that we understand about liminal spaces is based upon cultural, quote unquote, religious rituals that are meant to mark transitionary phases, coming of age rituals, moving from boyhood to manhood, from girlhood to womanhood, whatever it might be, moving from places of whatever other transitionary periods. It's meant to be. It's defined by the rituals that mark the transition, that embody the trend, and that's why I value ritual highly. I often make the joke that I'm religious but not spiritual, uh,
Mhm.
in that I'm not so much interested in like lofty, transcendent, otherworldly ideas. That doesn't appeal to me. But there's something about disciplined, dedicated practice, and more importantly, embodied practices, because I think
Mhm.
that's what rituals really are. It is inviting a certain kind of tangibility to intangible things. It is
Mhm.
providing a tactileness to an interiority. It's providing an outward manifestation of an ephemeral thing that we're experiencing. And so we get to actively not just engage our minds or our hearts, but we got to engage our body in this transitionary process, or engage our bodies, our hands, our feet, every part of ourselves into a practice, whether it's a rosary or whether it's lighting candles or whatever the tradition might be. You're getting to actively act out the things that you value, the things that you are important to you. You are enacting your beliefs, not just saying them, not just speaking them, but not feeling them, but actually you're praying with your feet. You're praying with your hands. And I think there's something really special about that. I think that's why I bring so many rituals into my creative practice, because it's this chance to actually pull all of my being into an alignment with something that I'm passionate about, with something that is deeply meaningful to me. And I think where rituals sometimes get a bad rap is because it's easy for rituals to become rote. And part of that is also the purpose, because what you're building in the continual practice of a ritual is muscle memory, right?
Mhm.
You want your body to constantly know automatically what it is to do this thing that you believe in without even having to think about it. Your hands know how to do that. So I keep all my materials in the same place at the same time. I work at the same time every day because I just want every part of my being and my body to know what it's supposed to do when it sits in this place. And that works on a number of levels because, number one, as someone who deals with something like depression, it means that no matter what liminal space my emotions or my mentality is in, my body still knows what to do. My body still knows how to function and operate and can still do it. I think also what it does is it creates some comfort um, in the unknowing, in the uncertainty. Because if I know this is how I always start a piece, this is where I keep my fragments, this is where I keep my scissors, this is where everything's located, I can reach for it without having to look for it. It means I have something to hold on to amidst all the things that I don't know. I have something sure that I can touch, something solid that can ground me so I can invite the mystery in and actually welcome it, actually sit with it, actually let it do what it needs to do with me. Often I think that the work knows more than I do, and it knows what it wants to be. But not only does the work know what it wants to be, it knows what it wants me to be. Madeline L'Engle says that when the artist is the servant of the work is better than the artist. And so it's about getting out of the way and letting the work do its job. But what I was going to say is the danger of rituals becoming rote is when we lose the awareness, when we lose the attention, when we lose the recognition and that certain level of mindfulness, to use too cliche of a word. It's when it becomes pure muscle memory that it becomes problematic. So it's always about letting your body know what to do automatically, but using that memorization as a way to let your awareness really, really come to fruition. Because if you're not having to think about what your body needs to do, that means you really get to inhabit that space of unknowing.
when we talked earlier about questions versus answers, you talked about having an open hand, and it makes me think here with ritual, it's not an open hand, but it's not a fist, right? It's like you're
Yes.
holding on, but it's a soft grip. It's a soft
Mm,
grip that's flexible. And, so where you can notice, you know what? I've been doing it this way for 4 years, but I think it would work better if my desk was over there or
yeah.
whatever. Or, I think I want to start painting and try that instead of whatever I'm doing, so that there's that softness and that
Yeah.
capacity for the
It
ritual to continue to breathe and live.
Yeah, it goes back to that allowing yourself to change, allowing yourself to grow, giving yourself to permission to be different, giving yourself to permission to let go of whatever raft you needed at the time, giving yourself permission to change your story, to recognize that what was once serving me is no longer serving me, and I can sit in this now space of not knowing what will serve me next and be grateful for what did serve me to get here. And we can
Yeah.
go back to joy and gratitude, but then also welcome the transition that needs to happen. I mean, that's something that I literally just kind of went through um, tangibly and physically. I completely redid my whole work desk, workbench, my whole system of how I stored things. Because I hit that point where I just started noticing like I had built this elaborate structure for how I work and what my workflow looked like, how my tools were organized, how my materials were organized. And I was so proud of that system. And it was so like meticulously crafted that I hung on to it for longer than it was serving me. And it started getting to the point where the work wasn't working. It wasn't feeling good anymore, but I kept forcing the system because I didn't want to have to think about a new system. I didn't want to have to think
Yeah.
about changing. It goes
Yeah.
back to that place of what we talked about, whether it's a marriage or whether it's, recognizing things you've done to hurt other people or whatever, it's recognizing that tension that's already there, recognize that this isn't working and I'm at the threshold. I can feel it because
Yeah.
this is uncomfortable and I have to do something. And you have that choice of either I make the change and step into the unknowing, step into the uncertainty, step into the question. Um, or keep clinging to this answer that used to serve you that doesn't anymore, and then everything suffers because of it. So finally, like I broke down and completely like threw everything out and started completely over, and it was daunting, but it's amazing. um the day that it was done, I just remember sitting in this space and just feeling the cleanest and freshest I had ever felt. It was the closest to kind of like this rebirth kind of moment that I can experience. And I hate to be so melodramatic about it, but it just really felt so cleansing and like a such new beginning. It was like the entire atmosphere in the room was now different just because I moved things and changed
Sure.
things and did everything else. And I think that's what we're looking for, and that's what can happen.
Well, it's interesting the atmosphere in the room was different because you had changed things, but also I would imagine the atmosphere inside you was different because you had responded to the need for change. And so
Yeah.
there wasn't something that was stuck there.
Yeah.
So it's both of those. I'm aware of the time. I don't want to keep you too long. So tell me if you have a few minutes for me to ask your perspective on something.
Oh, absolutely. I have all the time in the world. This is
Okay.
my agenda for today. I got nothing
Oh,
in
that's all
it.
right. So 9 p.m. is our end.
Perfect.
Um, so I was thinking about this last time we talked to and hearing you talk about having this ritual and this practice and this organized space and this routine and how helpful that is with depression. And I just kept thinking, oh, I feel like I have the opposite situation. And
Mm,
because I live with chronic illness. And chronic illness and chronic pain of varying degrees of difficulty. Sometimes it's like I can do just about everything, and then suddenly I can't. And in that, it's been about 6 years now of that, sometimes being more intense than others. But, um, I really have had to navigate it, particularly the hardest stretches, by having only the loosest to-do list or agenda for myself, and being ready at any moment to let absolutely everything but the true, true, true essentials, like keep my kids alive, go. And, so there's a part of me that goes, "Oh, I should have a steady writing practice. I should have a time
Mm.
I write. I should have an amount of time. And anytime I try, doesn't work. Can't be done. and, and really just mostly like I'll have a few good weeks maybe where I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And look how productive I am. I love it. And then it just ends in such frustration of like, here I am again. Um, and it's an interesting position to be in to have to sort of like continually just like, what can I do today? Or even, sometimes you don't know what you can do today, but you know what you can do in the next hour, right? What can I do right now? And like feeling into like where the warmest pole is and just trying to go with that. But then there's also the balancing that sometimes I'm like, that feels so self-indulgent. Who lives like that? What feels warm to me? I'll go do that. But it also feels essential. And I am very, very, very grateful that I have enough innate desire to write that this has never resulted in my just quitting. So I feel really lucky and grateful for whatever combination of genes in life has made that the case for me, that I don't need to have a set schedule. I finished a novel. It happened, right? So it still worked. But yeah, I don't even know exactly how to phrase my question. Even for myself, I don't know how to phrase the question, but I can feel that there's still something I'm trying to figure out in this.
It,
I think it has something to do with not wanting to give myself, wanting to notice the moments where that might be becoming an easy out, where there's harder work for me to lean into. But because I always have to start from this place of like, okay, what's possible today and what feels warm and where's the pull? Um, it would be easy to take. It's easy to not do the hard things too in that
mhm.
position. So I don't even know that I just formulated a question. I just
Mm.
vomited. Here, Dwayne, take my vomit and reflect as you will.
I think I need to sit in the liminal space of that image for a moment and just, um, so I hear a lot of things in there, and I'm trying to find the best point of entry. I think number one, I think what I implicitly hear at the start is that I feel like you're still harboring some sense of should. I had a therapist once that told me that should is a shitty word,
Yeah, you
because
shouldn't shit on
should.
yourself.
Right. Yeah,
Bad.
because should says who? Should say, so I feel like you might be harboring a slight should in that you feel like you should have a daily practice. You should be writing this way versus the way you write. And I think the fact that you recognize that isn't possible is already a win. Um, it's not a failure recognizing that you can't have a daily practice, because what that is recognizing how you work, recognizing how you work best, and more importantly, recognizing how you want to feel when you do work. And I think those are very, very important things. I took a trip to San Diego recently to see an artist friend named Charity Wan, and her work is absolutely, absolutely stunning. But we made a video together while we were there, and it was half joking, half serious, because I was giving her a lot of shit for her workspace, because I am very odd as a collage artist. I will acknowledge I am the unicorn, I am the anomaly, I am the exception, not the rule. In that I don't work well in chaos. I don't work well in clutter. I like a very clear workspace, because that is my quiet space. That is my meditative time. I know how noisy my head is. I know how many things are going on in my head at one time. So I want to make this place as calm and clear as possible, because the clearer this desk is, the clearer my head and my heart are. And I don't multitask here. I'm not one of those collage artists that works on a bunch of pieces at once. Nothing against those that do. That's just not how I want to feel when I'm working. I want to monotask when I'm making a collage. I want to focus on this one piece at this one time and be fully present with just this one piece. So it's recognizing how I like to work, but what's behind that is like how I like to feel while I'm working, because it's also generating how I want the work to feel. So it's giving myself permission to work in the way that serves me. And so if a daily practice doesn't serve you, fuck it, throw away that raft. It doesn't work. There are a million writers that will tell you the key is daily practice, but I can also name you several writers that are completely antithetical to that. Elizabeth Gilbert is anti daily practice. Cheryl Strait is anti daily
Love
practice.
them both, so that's
Yeah,
good
and
to
they're amazing. They don't do that. Cheryl Strait does not write every day. She will go rent a hotel room and then like bash out whatever she's going to write in like a few days or a week or a weekend or whatever. Elizabeth Gilbert does something very similar where she says she will just vomit out the entire novel and then go back and fix it. So I think it's like if that's how you work, then just give yourself that permission to work the way you work, and let it be what it is. I also think you're not giving yourself enough grace by recognizing one of the most important things I think any maker of any kind can ask themselves is like, what can I do right now?
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think that is the most pivotal thing that, like I said, any maker can do because that's all you have. You have moments. We can't always be guaranteed to have these long stretches of time that have these hours of uninterrupted road. You're a parent. I mean, my kids are older, so I don't have the same kinds of interruptions, but I still have a day job. I still have responsibilities. I'm very well aware of what my time constraints are. So I'm always looking for those pockets of time and then just asking, what can I do with this pocket of time? What can I accomplish now? Sometimes I'm not a great boss to myself and I expect too much. I'm a really terrible boss to myself. So the fact
We can all be
that
better.
you're giving yourself that kind of grace to already say, what can I do today? What do I feel pulled towards? I feel like that's already a superpower
Mm.
that I don't think you should fight against that. I feel like you should lean into that because if the work is coming out the way you want it to, if you're feeling the way you want to when you're working, if you're happy with how the work feels when it's done, then clearly it's working and just lean into what's working. How can you not revolutionize or radicalize or change your process, but like can you lean into more? How can you make it more effective? One of the
Yeah.
things that I think is most important um, for any type of maker at the risk of being redundant again, is recognizing just that you have these pockets of time. What can you do with them? I do that even off the record. Well, it's definitely on the record. We're live stream, but like even during my work day, I'll have these moments in between work tasks or these breaks that I get or days when it might be slow. And obviously I don't have a collage table at work. I can't just whip out a
Mhm.
collage, but it's like, what can I work on in a spare amount of time? Well, I can craft a few sentences that might be an idea for a newsletter. I can work on this. I can create a few things maybe digitally on my phone or on some programs that I have on my computer available at work. And because I think to be a maker of any kind is being able to make no matter where you are, no matter what time it is, no matter what you have available. It's looking at what you have available to you and going, what's the best thing I can do right now with what I have access to? And I think that's what you're already doing. So it's just a matter of number one, letting yourself do that, giving yourself permission to work that way, and then figure out, okay, how could I maybe do this more efficiently or how could I be more productive in these pockets of time? But also giving yourself permission to not be productive, to giving yourself permission to not produce anything if it's not coming. Because I also think there's so much about creativity that has nothing to do with production. Like you need staring out the window time, you need
Yeah.
boredom time, you need time of not making anything or just doing busy work. There are certain tasks that I've grafted into my process that have nothing to do with assembly. I mean, that's one of the things that got talked about when I was with Charity in San Diego, and we were talking about her workspace, and that she brought up like so much of what I do at my desk is just assembly. So much of my process takes place completely away from my desk that has nothing to do with my desk. So my process doesn't begin and end here. There's a lot of parts that happen in other places because I know when I'm at work and I have downtime, I can create digital things that then I can print and then come home and cut up later. Or I can create, I can stain papers on the weekends when I don't have the right headspace to really do a full composition, but I want to do something. I want to be busy and get my hands in something. So I'll stain some papers, I'll paint papers, I'll do these things that produce nothing, but it creates material that then I can restock my workbench with. And so when I am ready to sit down, I've done all this prep work. It's kind of like, that's why I love, I often refer to my setup as my mise en place. I love the chef kind of mentality, the line cook mentality. And so um, there's a certain appreciation for prep work, for making sure
Mhm.
my station is stocked with everything that it needs. So when it comes time to cook, all my ingredients are already ready, and then it's just a matter of putting the dish together. So I think it's just finding that, understanding how you work, how you prefer to work, understanding what pockets of time you have available, understanding how you feel, understanding what's sustainable and what's not sustainable for you, and then trying to just figure out how can I use these pockets of time most effectively? What can I have prepared in advance that when I do have this time to sit down and write, I'm not having to hunt for things or I'm not having to find this or find that. It's already prepared, it's already readily available. Because then it also gives you like little creative practices that are low friction that you can do anytime. It's like, okay, I know I do like to have these stained papers. I do like to have these certain textures, but I don't want to waste my actual assembly time doing that. So I want to do that in other times. And so it's easy for me to like sit on the couch at night after dinner with a book and just cut out images I like. I'm not thinking about composition. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to use them, what I'm going to use them. I'm just turning pages going like, I like that picture, cut it out, put it in a pile. I like that one too, cut it out, put it in a pile. Still no ideas, no concepts. I'm not in that headspace. I'm even decidedly not letting myself go into that headspace because that's not what that time is for. I'm doing some just doing some like low friction busy work that doesn't even feel like work, that I can watch whatever show I like or hang out with my son and chit chat while I'm just cutting things up. But then at the end of that evening, I might have a stack of pages that I can then come put to my desk. And so tomorrow, when I get home from work, I've already got all these things that are ready for me and I can just jump right into the work. So I think it's little things like that, if that makes any sense.
The sort of corollary that's coming up with me for poetry, because if I turned the camera around and you saw my desk, you would see that I am not a horribly organized. I mean, it's not total chaos. Sometimes it is, but I'm not a super organized person. But um, I really have the sense that any moment of my life that I'm alive to is it's a piece of paper being cut out and set aside for a future collage.
Mm.
But of course it's gonna be a poem. So it's like every feeling that I let myself feel all the way, um, is there for me to draw on when I'm writing a poem.
Hmm.
Every butterfly where I actually stop and crouch down to watch it and, like, how it moves, now that's inside me for
Right.
whenever I'm writing a poem. And so just trying to and I'm not doing it so that I can write a poem. I'm doing it because I want to be alive, and I am alive, and I want to enjoy that while I have it. Um, but it does feed the poetry. I had an experience in this past month where I one thing I can do a lot of right now, which is great, is walk and hike. I can't do much with my upper body at the moment, but well, most days I can walk or hike. I did have scarlet fever and giardia right before that, and
Mm.
it's been chaos here. In addition
Wow.
to all the normal stuff.
Yeah.
So, there wasn't as much walking and hiking there, but in general, I can walk and hike a lot, which is great. But I can't do much with my upper body, which includes typing and writing. Um, and I kept feeling like, I can just feel there's a poem, I don't even know what it's about, but I can just, like, feel a poem that wants to be born, and I just need to go be in the woods. So I would go hike and hike and hike. And I just have all these images come to mind, and I'd write them down and all these feelings, but no, like, poem. It was just like and I always felt great and was glad I was there, but I was like, "Huh, I really thought that there was this poem waiting, and I didn't find it. I
Mm.
need to find it." And I went through, like, several days of hiking and having that experience. And then suddenly I had, like, 3 days where all of this old grief that I didn't know I needed to process just, like, churned up, and so I spent, like, 3 days crying, not literally all day, but at the end of it, suddenly the poem was there, and it incorporated that whole arc, and
Mm.
I didn't have any idea that that's what I was in, but it was
Mhm.
like I needed every one of those tears, and I needed every step on those trails and every moment of stopping to look at something and stopping to feel something to write the poem that I wrote. And so I have to come back to that trust over and over.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
yeah, I love that you're saying that. I think that there's so much I want to pick up on, but I'll start with that trust point because I think one of the reasons why I can sit back and look at creativity, especially creativity for me, and see it as a spiritual practice, because there is a very real element of faith involved into it.
mm,
It's
yeah.
it's a belief in the work. It's a belief in your ability to do the work, a belief that the work will show up when it's ready, a belief that the work will tell you what it wants to be, will show you what it wants to be, that you'll discover it. There is trust and there's faith. There's trust in the process, trust in yourself, trust in your own creativity, trust in whatever mystery that brings creativity to us to begin with.
Yeah.
There's this great story that I tell over and over about a philosopher named Jacques Derrida. He's famous for this one particular quote that says, I rightly pass as an atheist. But he also often referred to himself as a man of prayer.
Mhm.
And so there was this story or this event where he was speaking at a conference and it was part of a panel discussion. And there was another philosopher that raised this to his attention and said, Professor Derrida, you said you rightly pass as an atheist, but you also describe yourself as a man of prayer. If these two things are true, to whom or to what are you praying? And Jacques Derrida says, well, if I knew that, I would know everything. So there's a certain kind of acceptance of the mystery that we don't know where this thing comes from. We don't know where it's come, but we do know that it does come and it does come when it's time and it is there. So is that trust and that's faith in the in between of it showing up in that liminal space of waiting for the work to decide that it's ready to come to us, that it's deciding that, and maybe it's not even deciding that it's ready. Maybe it's just waiting for us to be ready. And I feel
Right.
like that's more accurate. What do we need to do to be ready for the work? You needed to spend 3 days grieving and walking in the
Yeah.
woods to be ready for that poem. You sensed it's coming and you didn't push it. You let it take its time. And I think that's the best thing you could have done. There was nothing wrong with that process. What I was going to say on a practical level is there is an understanding how you like to work and understanding how you like to feel while you're working is also the understanding of how you like to pace your work and understanding what pace works best for you. For me, I like to work fast. I work best when I work fast, but there are very specific reasons for why I work fast. My inner critic is loud and obnoxious, and he's a real motherfucker. So in other words,
Be
so it,
nice to him. He's trying to help you.
he is.
Very
Um,
critical of your
he
inner critic there, going,
That's fair. You know what? That is very fair. I'll take a step back.
I'm just
I will recognize he's not always as helpful as I'd like him to be. But I know if I can work at a particular pace, I can stay ahead of it. I can kind of outrun my inner critic. I can have a piece of work done before he has a chance to tell me I did it wrong. And then even if he kicks in by the time he's finished, like, well, that piece looks like crap. I'm like, well, it's finished and I'm already working on a new piece. So you can ruminate on that one all you want. I've already started something new. Um, but if you work slow, I think the important thing is like just allow yourself to work slow. Why are you forcing yourself to work fast if that's not how your work is best? I also
usually
think
your poems are fast. So that one was kind of an anomaly, and it was interesting to have that because usually I write poems very fast and I post them very fast, and then the inner critic turns on after I've posted them. Like, maybe we should post second drafts, not first drafts.
that's kind of you and I have very similar processes then, because
Yeah.
part of my process, I work quickly, I share quickly, and I make it a point to never look at it, to try to look at as little after it's posted. So even when I'm looking at comments or replies or whatever on whatever platform I'm on, I'm not really even looking at what piece of work someone's commenting to. I'm just
Right.
looking at just the comment and just responding to them because that's all that matters. I don't need to judge or revisit that work because I also think this is slightly changing the subject, that as makers, it's not our job to decide whether the work is good or not.
Mm.
It's not our a job to decide or make statements about the quality of our own work. That's what the audience is for. That's their job. That's above our pay grade. Our job is just to show up and do the work, just make the thing. And then what's great about working that way for me is that even if the audience responds negatively to a piece of work, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm already on to this other piece. That's old work. That's already in the past. I kind of just don't care about that anymore. Um,
One thing
but
that's interesting there, or go ahead, I can
no,
sec
go ahead. Go ahead.
actually, what one thing that's interesting there with poetry is it's like I write them fast usually, very fast, post them typically the same day without revision, but then, I am working on a collection, so then I go back and I revise. Not every most poems I've posted on Substack, I've not gone back to revise, but, maybe 50 or so of them I have. And, um and it's interesting thinking, well, what am I trying to do there if not make it better? If it's not my job to decide if it's good, what is revision? And I think that for me, what it feels like is I'm trying to make it truer.
Mm,
Not truer in terms of like more factual, but um, like when I read that poem, I want to feel something down into my bones that rings as true still.
sure.
And if I'm not
Yeah.
feeling it, or if I can tell that somehow the feeling I was trying to provoke, or that the feeling that the poem created in me that I was hoping maybe it also created for other people wasn't working because something about the language was giving them a different impression. So that I'm trying to align what's on the page with this true thing that I'm feeling. It's hard to put that to words. But
No,
yeah, I don't think it's about being good. I think it's about, is this the truest thing I can write in this
yes.
moment?
I love that. I think you're exactly right because yes, I think at heart, um, when revision is handled open-handedly,
Yeah.
and held loosely, it is that. I think I can relate to that as a collage maker, because that goes back to exactly what we were talking about. When something doesn't feel right when a certain fragment sits here versus here, and it's
Yeah.
just recognize that it's not about quality. Nothing in my arrangement of the pieces of these fragments has anything to do with it being good or being better or being well composed. It has everything to do with just some gut feeling. Some part of me feels right and in place and in line and together and whole when this fragment touches this one in just this way. And it's just recognizing that it's not good or bad. It's not quality. It's just feeling. It's that pure feeling. Like you said, you want to feel something and you know that feeling is there. You have faith in it. You trust in it. And it's finding the right arrangement of the fragments that brings out that feeling in you that makes the missing part of you feel like it's better and aligned than it was before. Because I think when you're in alignment, when your work feels the way it feels for you, when you're alive in your work, when you're in that alive space, the reader will be too. The audience will be too. And that's that level of authenticity. People can smell bullshit, people can feel it. And no one wants any more of it. We've got plenty of it. What we need is that authenticity, that rawness, that whatever it is, um, of someone coming alive. People can feel when someone's full of shit and people can feel when someone's fully alive because I think what happens when a maker comes fully alive, when a maker gives themselves permission to be the maker that they want to be, to work the way they want to be, to feel the way they want to feel, and they are as awake as they can be, they are immediately giving permission to everyone else to be as awake as they are. They are ushering an invitation to like, come be as alive as I am in this moment, and let's be alive in this space together.
Yeah. And I think too that doing that from a spirit of exploration and generosity and, I wonder what will happen instead of, I've got to make this just right so everybody approves of me and thinks I'm great. Like coming in with that spirit of exploration and generosity and willingness to, have something fall flat for other people. I like to hope that that gives people permission to show up and create their own stuff and not worry overly much about whether it measures up to, I don't know, Elizabeth Gilbert, or I don't know, a famous collage artist.
I barely know any either.
Whether it measures up to Dwayne Toops or whatever. Yeah, and that's one of the things when my inner critic kicks on, when I look at something I've posted and go, "Oh, you posted that." That's I go, "Well, if somebody else reads it and they like it, then that's great. And if somebody else
Mhm.
reads and they don't like it, well, then hopefully they go, if she can post that, I can post whatever I want to. And then I've given them a gift
Yes.
as well." such a
Yeah.
gift for everybody.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. That is precisely I think my ethos, or what I hope it is.
Yeah.
In that I am adamant about I share everything. I share the pieces I hate, I share the pieces I can't stand, I share the pieces I love, and I'll never give you an indication as to which is which, because I
Mhm.
just share them uh unequivocally. I don't and I do it for that exact reason, in that I'm going to share my shit work right alongside what I think is my best work, because I'm going to show you that, like, hey, like, I don't have no interest in this curated state of being. I want every maker to know that you have permission to make bad work. You are required to make bad work. We've talked about that before. That's the only way you get to the good work. So why are we hiding the bad work? The bad work could be celebrated, but also I don't want to harp too much on the idea of bad work, because that's already initiating that idea of quality, and it's really not about that. It's just, I think for me, what I often recognize or try to do, and to give myself some grace, is I'll look at a piece and go like this, I don't feel right about this piece. And rather than throwing it in the drawer, throwing it away, no, I still share it, because I also understand that sometimes the work isn't always for me, but it could be for someone else.
Yeah.
And so why am I going to hold it back? Because I may not be the right audience for my own piece of work. And that's
Mm.
okay. I'm fine with that, because it will land for someone else, hopefully. And I'm fine with that too, because I think that also gives some kind of service to the work. I think that's another way to be the servant of the work. The work
Mhm.
doesn't ask us whether it's for us or not. Like, for me, the thing I get the most out of is the doing the work, the process of the work. I'm not precious about my finished work. I don't really care about it that much, because it's the process for me. So I'm totally fine not being the audience for a finished piece, because it may not be for me, but that might still be what the work needed to be. I might be what I needed to be for that work. Um, and that's fine. It can go from there. But I think there's a certain level of honesty that's required for that. And I think that's something I'm, these days definitely trying to work harder on, and be that, because there's been, situations where I've not been the honest person that I needed to be. And I have to live with that space and be in that situation of knowing that I'm not the person that I thought I was or intended to be. And there's certain level of honesty required for that, to let that exist in the work, and let that exist in yourself, that going, hey, I've been confronted with these things where I was not open the way that I should have been. And what do I do with that now, and how do I move forward in the work, and how do I show up and be honest even about the dishonesty, or honest about the withholding, to give other people that same permission, to where, hey, you can admit that you fucked up, and you can own that, and you can move forward for that. And what that looks like will be different in every situation. But part of that is the acknowledgement, is the openness, is the willingness to look at it and see it and accept it, and then figure out, how do I move on from here? How do I let the work guide me from here? And so on and so forth.
One of the things that I've tried to live into more and more, and I think have lived into more and more, is just the realization in relationships, and I think it's probably true in our relationship to our work as well, but in all kinds of relationships, that um, when there's a rupture, right? Because you make a mistake, you don't show up in the way you wanted, the other person makes a mistake and doesn't show up in the way that they want. If if there's accountability, and if there's like taking responsibility, and if there's empathy and there's compassion, there's showing up and there's listening and there's being curious and there's like setting ego and shame aside, because shame is really not helpful there. Um,
Mm, mhm.
then because shame is just, that's just another iteration of ego, right? So um when a person can put that down, thinking about friends or partners or things, if they can put that down and show up and own a mistake, I end up feeling closer to the person than I would have if they'd never hurt me in the first place. And I have
Mhm.
to try to remind myself of that too. If I've hurt somebody, or if I'm worried that I've hurt somebody, that if I can have the courage to bring it up and to own it and to ask and to explore, um, I'm having a line come into my head from a poem I once wrote that was like playing with this, but it was playing
I love
from
it.
like
Bring it.
metaphors. And it was like, the rift can be the moment of lift. Because in climbing,
Mm,
like you're like shoving your hands into cracks and like pulling up like that, and you use the crack, you use the rupture, you use the rift to
yes.
ascend.
Yeah.
And um,
I love the idea of a rupture, yeah, being the way to ascend something. It's the damage isn't needing to be reconciled, but utilized. Um,
yeah,
to
yeah,
to pull forward towards something else, and I think that's very true because I think when you're in that space of having to recognize and aware that you've severely hurt someone in potentially an irreparable way, when you're in that space of recognizing that you have these faults that got the better of you and you were not the person that you should have been or wish you would have been or absolutely should have been, um, you know, you have to recognize you don't always get a chance to make amends directly, right? Sometimes you hurt people so badly that there is no chance at second chances in that situation. And you have to sit in that space. You have to sit in that tension and know that that's something that you did, that's something that you can't take back, but it's still another threshold. That's still another liminal space that you go like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the damage. This is the rift. This is the rupture. And how am I going to use it? Maybe I can't put it back together. Sometimes you can, and maybe you can't. And if you can't, the temptation is to wallow, or the temptation is to like turn your back and run, or the temptation is to give up, whatever it might it be. But it can be this opportunity to where maybe I can't make amends with the person that I wronged. Maybe I can't fix that thing that I did, but I can make sure I don't do it again. I can make sure that I'm better because of it, and that I can be better to the people that are in my orbit. I can be better to whoever I can be because of that, and hope that that somehow does something. Um I think sometimes making amends has to be something you give to yourself as well.
100%.
Sometimes you have no choice. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, if you can't, like in a situation where the other person walks away and maybe rightfully so or justifiably so, and you've said what you've said and tried to make it better, but you can't glue it back together. There's no
Right.
forcing that, then making the amends in yourself. Yeah. I One of my kiddos really struggles with shame, and the
Same.
thing I
If
try
if I can be ashamed about it, believe me, I will.
I mean, the thing I watch in him that, and I try to talk with him through this, and I hope it's absorbing a little, is just this notion that, if you hurt somebody, it's an opportunity to show up for them, and even if they don't accept it, you get to show up the way you wished you'd show up the first time. And if
Yeah.
instead you put that energy into beating yourself up, you haven't made anything better for them.
No.
And now you're hurt in a way that probably makes it more likely that you're gonna do the same thing again. So if
Yeah.
instead, like it's so natural, like, oh, if I beat myself up, then I've punished myself for this thing. It's not gonna happen again. But counterintuitively, I think usually we have to actually be really, really, really kind to ourselves when we fuck up. Like the worse we
Yeah.
fuck up, the kinder we have to be to ourselves, which is
Yeah.
so
I
hard.
I think you're right. As a matter of fact, because there's been all these things kind of going on in my orbit or world, I actually yesterday I just started seeing a therapist again,
Mhm.
and so knowing that I was going to initiate that journey again. And really doing that, I really wanted to take the opportunity. Like, okay, if I know that this is the right move, I need to start seeing a therapist again, then I don't want to waste this opportunity. I want to use it to the best of my ability. So it's like I walked into this session and just kind of like was laying all my cards on the table. I was like, here's this pattern of behavior that I've seen in myself. Here's these things that I've noticed about myself where I can be closed or where I can be dishonest or where I can be deceitful. Here's all these things that I've done. I've named them out. I've laid it all out. I owned it all, was just taking responsibility for like the past 7 years of whatever else it might be. And so much to the point that there was even one point where even my therapist was saying, I think you need to give yourself just a little bit more grace. I think you might be taking just a little too much responsibility, because the
Mhm.
fact that all this has happened and you've made the choice to be here, the fact that you're taking strides, the fact that you're seeing it and you're actioning it is like it already puts you light years ahead of a lot of other people. And I don't want to pat myself too much on the back of that, but I think that's those moments where you recognize where there is it's that delicate balancing act again, where it's like it's recognizing those things that you've done, it's recognizing the faults and foibles and the mistakes, it's choosing to sit within them, to let the tension really hit you, to honor that, to give credence to it, to let yourself really feel it and experience it, but also not let yourself wallow in it and not just let yourself be defined by it or become embroiled in a shame spiral because of it, but also not rush to repair things in a way that will make things worse. It's that liminality of, like I said, just sitting within the tension of it, but also recognizing that I have to get up and I have to take something from this. I have to take this rupture and a figure, how do I make this rift become the lift? How do I make this fracture become the thing that actually makes me better somehow in some way, and hope that that ripples out?
I think too, they're just like not getting stuck in a story either of I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, or I'm good, or everything's my fault, or nothing's my fault. But thinking more about like the way you talk about approaching collage of like just there you are in your clear space with all the papers that you want to work with, and you're just feeling, okay, where does this want to go? Like what feels right? And I think
Mhm.
it can be so easy to get stuck in a narrative about how much we have or have not fucked up or how much somebody else has fucked up. And really all we ever have to do is figure out the next step. Just
Yes.
which paper are you gonna put right now where? And, like, if we can be still in that and be centered and be in our bodies, then the bigger question of, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a person I am, like, it doesn't even it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's this great and now his name escapes me, but there's a Zen priest. I think he's based out of New York. Norman. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But in obviously in the Buddhist tradition, wow, this is going to be my theme throughout this whole talk. Obviously they have this idea of rebirth, and the way the idea of rebirth, uh, what it means gets interpreted differently from tradition to tradition.
Yeah.
What I like about the Zen tradition is it's very practical, it's very grounded, it's very kind of like earthy and pragmatic. Um, so I love the way he described rebirth. A lot of times people will mistake rebirth as kind of like just another rebranding of like reincarnation, and that's not what it is, and especially not in the Zen tradition. What rebirth is, the way he explains, is like in each passing moment, you are dying and being reborn again and again. That's what rebirth is like, and that's the liminality that's built into our being, where we are never fully there. We are always passing away and becoming. We are always born and dying and being reborn in each moment. And so that means each moment is its own threshold. Each moment is its own pivot point. Each moment is its new decision. Like, how do I make this moment better than the last moment? How can I move forward in a better, or the way you said it, I love that. Just what's my next step from here? What's the one thing that I can do from here? It's not about trying to rush to get to the other side of the liminal space. It's just sitting with it and going like, what's my next step? And to bring that back to, your creative process, I think that's where you definitely should give yourself some more grace. It's like every day you're starting that. What can I do right now? What can I do with this hour? I have this patch of time. What can I do? And I think maybe the one piece of advice I would give you in that space is like, if the answer is nothing, then let it be nothing.
That is always
That
the
is,
hardest one for me. The
yeah.
go back to bed answer, I'm like, "No."
Um, but I think if we want to get real practical, one of the things I heard you mention is that you were talking about it. It's hard to type, and I would almost kind of wager, or at least maybe not wager. I would ask, like, is it essential to you that you type? Because I can't help but wonder if, because I know for me, like when I'm writing, there's these very real periods where I'm reading it aloud. That's important to my writing because I like my writing to have a certain cadence, a certain rhythm, a certain kind of syntax. Sometimes I will purposely or maybe not purposely, sometimes I'll choose a less clear word or maybe a clunkier phrasing because I
Mm.
like the way it sounds better
Yeah,
than
totally.
maybe a clearer word. Um, all that to say, that's like I just wonder if that might be something worth trying. Like if maybe like voice memos or voice
Oh, totally.
recordings
Yeah,
might be better for you than like on days where you don't feel like you can type. Could you talk
yeah.
it out? Could you walk in the woods and just have a conversation with yourself and
I
see where it
mean,
goes?
yeah, 90% of my poems are me walking in the woods and then like, oh, I'll quickly write a note in my phone so I don't forget it. And that's where 90% of my poems come
Perfect.
from.
Yeah.
Actually, January and some of February, I was bedbound and not supposed to use my arms more than I absolutely had to. Or, I mean, I could get up and take a shower and I could actually go for a short walk, but I basically wasn't supposed to be like sitting upright or standing upright unless I kept my head like this, which is very
Ooh.
cumbersome. So, um, and yeah, using my arms as little as possible. So I started, dictating journal entries every day, and they were
Beautiful.
so long and sprawling. Like I have a much better filter when I'm writing than when I'm talking.
Yeah.
But then what I would do is like I would give myself just a few moments of like, okay, I'm going to hold my phone for this, but I'm going to be lying down and I'm like in the optimal position with pillows for my arms, and I would make erasure poems out of my own sprawling journal entries, and that was my creative practice for much of
See,
the start of the year.
I think that's something worth keeping in your creative tool belt because I
Yeah.
can see how if your literal physicality from day to day is unpredictable, that's such a good plan B to have in your pocket
Mhm.
that you can already know like I can vomit into this phone and then I can pick out what's essential within it. And I think that's so helpful. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I think every maker needs is some kind of plan B practices or busy work practices or things that you can do. I think that's part of those rituals, part of those routines where it's like it's recognizing that this is a part of myself that is unpredictable. For me, it's depression. I literally don't know how I'm going to feel from one day to another. And like sometimes I can have warnings. Like I've lived with the dark passenger of depression for long enough to where it's like I can feel when he's starting to enter the room.
Sure, yeah.
And so it's like I can some days I can kind of prepare like, okay, I can feel myself getting low, so I better start making sure everything is where it should be because the next couple days might be a little bit more muscle memory based for work. But all that to say, like, yeah, it's just recognizing the unpredictableness of your own self and going, okay, well, here's what I do. Here's what my work looks like on the best of days. And when days when it's just hard to do anything else, here's what I can do on these in between days. And here's the days where just I can't do anything, and all three can exist at the same time. And it's just kind of moving through them and giving yourself permission to move through them and let them be what they are. But I love that practice so much of kind of making erasures from your own work. I think there's something really interesting and meaningful in that. I was having a I think I was having a conversation with Jill earlier today. It may have been on in the comments to my recent newsletter, but she was um I forget how it came up, but I was talking about how one of the things that I appreciate about minimalism, because I try to practice some semblance of minimalism in the way I live and what I possess and what I have and things like that. But I really try to take the lessons of minimalism and bring it into my art and bring it into my writing and my ways of living. And what I appreciate the most about the ideas of minimalism is it's not about reduction, it's not about elimination, it's not really about having less, it's not about being less, it's not about a Spartan life, it's not about austerity, it's not about trying to form some kind of modern day asceticism. It's about essentiality. It's about finding what is the truest thing, what is the most central thing, what is the most essential thing in this thing that I'm doing, and can I get rid of everything that is blocking what's most essential? And so I think that's what I see you doing in that practice. So I think I can commend you for that. And I think that's really beautiful because you're allowed, number one, you're giving yourself so much grace and so much permission throughout that whole practice. And so I would almost want to encourage you to do that more often, maybe. Because number one, you're giving yourself permission to let it spew out. you're not filtering, you're not holding back. You're letting yourself show up exactly how you want to show up in that moment with all of your muchness. And you're letting it all out. You're owning it. You're letting it be. You're letting it fill the room. You're sitting with it. And then you can sit back with it and then kind of go, this isn't necessary. This isn't necessary. And you're finding what is most essential in all that. And that's just such a beautiful practice from start to finish.
Thank you. You know, it's funny when you were talking about writing and the way it's really challenging for you. Actually, first, I want to say thank you for the lovely comment. I can't see the name now because it scrolled down, but I love that we are keeping somebody company while they cut and paste and glue.
Oh, that's Jill. Yes,
Yeah,
Jill.
it's wonderful. Um, but yeah, when you were talking about writing and just like all the noise in your head and it being difficult to pull the words because of all the noise, that's what I thought of. I thought of like these long dictated journal entries and erasures. And I thought, oh, all of Dwayne's writing is actually an erasure. So
It really is. I've
yeah.
never made that connection before, but I love that you pointed that out. For a long time, cutout poetry and erasure poetry was such a pivotal part of my process. That was kind of that was my gateway drug into collage. That's where it
Yeah.
started for me. But yeah, I think that is genuinely what it's like for me because usually there's just so much swirling inside me when it comes time to write, and sometimes it's hard to know where to start. So it is literally reaching into kind of that oceanic abyss of unknowing and just grabbing something that I can touch, just something that I can manage to get my hands around, and then pulling it close in and then looking to see what it is and going like, okay, this is the thing that came out. So how do I describe this? What do I have to say about this? How do I feel about this? And it is being that space. So it is about removing from the noise and then finding a way to remove the noise entirely to just get at something that is essential within it. Yeah.
And your
Love it.
writing is so noise free. Like it really just feels like here, I polished this tool. It's for you. Like that's what it
I
feels,
love
which I
that.
love.
So thank you so much. I do there are several people that have told me not anything like that lyrical or beautiful. So thank you for that. Definitely received that. That's such a gift to be given because what I hope happens in the writing is that it's received as kind of a gift of something because so much of what I write is um so much of what I write is just what I wish someone would tell me.
Yeah.
What I wish someone would write to me, because I think what all makers do is give gifts to strangers.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's something really special and beautiful about that there is a stranger, someone who does not know you at all, but cared enough to drag themselves out of bed and write something or glue something because they knew someone somewhere in the world
Oh,
would need this.
shit. Dwayne, I'm about to get knocked off of Substack. I can't believe I've been on for 2 hours. My phone
Oh,
is
wow.
about to kick me out because of my, like, self-imposed filters I set for myself.
Okay. Well, then that's no problem. You're good. You're good. Don't panic. We're all good. I think we've covered lots of good ground, so we're
This
fine.
has been amazing.
There. Are you still there? I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but oh, there we go. No. This might be the point where I have to start a tap dance of some kind, and that's not going to go well for anyone. The only other options are knock knock jokes. I don't think that's good. Lisa, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I can't hear you at all. Um, oh, now I can see you. That's progress. I still can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. No, not quite. Please pause for technical difficulties. Oh, no, maybe. All right, there we go. I can see you now. Oh, there we go. I think we've got some audio back. There we
I
go.
didn't know we were still on.
Yeah,
I like
sorry
probably
about
had it up my nostril.
that. No worries. All right.
Oh gosh. So I just recently applied this like thing on my phone because I was like,
Mhm.
"Ah, I just want to be more intentional." And so you set like a limit for yourself, but it cap maxes at 2 hours. And so when I got on, I was like, oh,
Oh,
I'll just put it at 2 hours. And then I didn't even
perfect. Yeah.
think of it.
No worries. I
uh,
wouldn't have anticipated us going for that time. It did not feel like that long at all. It's been an
no,
absolute pleasure.
it didn't. Well, we should wrap, but I want to go back to what you were saying, which I have completely lost now. Do you remember where you were?
Oh, I think I was wow, okay, that's a good question. No, I think I've lost it too. Anyone in the comments know where we left off?
Help, help.
Um,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
that's okay. I think we were mostly just talking about that practice of just kind of yeah, the erasure or the gift of the writing. Yeah, I think so much of what I write is things that I wish someone would tell me, some things that I wish someone would write to me, and I just can't help but think that if I need to hear it, if I need to be told that, then there's someone else that needs to hear it as well. I think so much of what I hope to do in the way I show up in these spaces is be the type of person that I wish that I had. You know, I always want to be the type of follower that I wish I had, the type of subscriber I wish I had, the type of
yeah,
supporter that I wish I had. I want to try my best to be that for someone else. So I think when you're doing the work well, that's well, hopefully when you're doing well, that's at least what it is. It's that gift to a stranger, that even though I don't know you, you mean enough to me to make sure that this might get into your hands somehow.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, hopefully everybody who's on here, including me, is now going to go start copying and pasting your posts and just put "Dear Dwayne" at the front of it, and then start emailing it to you, so you can receive that loveliness for yourself
That
too.
sounds great. I would love that. All right.
Oh, well, this has been such a gift. Thank you so much for
You're
this whole
welcome.
conversation. And thank you to all of you who have joined. And I can't believe you all stuck around for 2 hours. Thank
I
you.
cannot, yeah, well, my utmost gratitude for everyone who's there. You guys are
Absolutely.
amazing, and you mean so much to me. And in case no one's told you today, I love you with all my everything.
Oh, and Dwayne, I think we all love you with all of our everything too. So you've got it back now.
Wonderful.
All
What a
right.
gift.
Hope everybody has a lovely rest of their weekend.
All right. Thank you
Thanks.
again. Bye bye.
Bye.